ReTrekking with Dylan and Tyler. Welcome to ReTrekking Podcast, Star Trek The Next Generation, Episode 9, The Battle. We're going to start
already sound happier than the last.
Well, that was a pretty low bar. We're going to start with a plot summary, because our observations and stuff don't always go in chronological order, so we're going to just start with a plot summary, and then we'll go into what we think was good, what we think was bad, what we think was silly, or just weird, or awkward. So, the plot of this episode is, the Enterprise goes to meet with the Ferengi, whose captain, Damon Bach, was his name, I think, Dylan?
Yep, Damon Bach.
He gives Picard his old command, the Stargazer, this little ship, and then while they go through that whole process, they call him the hero of Maxia, and Picard doesn't quite understand. And then Picard also starts experiencing huge headaches that give him flashbacks to the past aboard the ship, and it just really distracts him in the beginning of the episode. He reveals that the Stargazer was attacked by an unknown vessel at point-blank range, and then pulled off this maneuver that they call the Picard maneuver now, and they teach it in Starfleet Academy, apparently, is what I got from it. Mm-hmm. And then, so the crew goes to visit the Stargazer after talking to the Ferengi, and they find it to be safe, but then it's revealed that Damon Bach is using some sort of mind control orb device to cause the headaches that Picard is having and his flashbacks. Picard slowly deteriorates as the Ferengi increase the power of the headaches. The crew uncovers things like a false captain's log where Picard supposedly admits that he destroyed an unarmed vessel, and all this stuff to make him look bad. They confirm the logs are false, but Picard, under the Ferengi's influence, he beams to the Stargazer. Damon Bach meets him there, leaves one of the orbs, and talks about, ha ha ha, revenge for killing the Ferengi ship. And then Picard gets totally lost in his delusions from the past, and starts to think that the Enterprise is attacking him, but after anticipating his tactics, the Enterprise manages to stop him and convince him to destroy the orb on the bridge. And then Picard returns to normal, and they tow the Stargazer away, and everything's fine. I think that's as concise of a summary as I could make.
That's about the gist of the entire episode, yeah. The only thing that I would also kind of mention was that the whole reason the Ferengi guy was doing it was because the ship was commanded by his son.
His son? Oh, okay, I missed that.
Yeah, well, because a big part of the episode was that he was giving away the ship for free, which to the Ferengi is just really weird.
Yeah, and his crew is even mad at him.
Yep.
Okay. So you want to start, since I did the plot summary, Dylan?
Sure.
What did you like?
I've said this probably for, a good number of the episodes so far, or recently at least, but I like that they actually had foreshadowing in this episode when he begins having the headaches, right at the start.
Yeah.
I mentioned this a lot because the earlier episodes don't have a good sense of that. Just looking back at, Code of Honor, how the fight to the death thing just pops up out of nowhere. No foreshadowing whatsoever. Just, we're doing a fight to the death now, guys. So you know.
We don't talk about that episode, Dylan.
Actually we do. I think we referenced it quite a bit, so. Yeah.
But I know what you mean, because in the beginning, Picard has a headache, and it was a little forced sounding to me, but, Dr. Crusher says, headaches, that's super strange, and no one ever gets those anymore. And so immediately that's going to be a big problem.
Yeah. But it's
just something, because the other episodes have been kind of a hodgepodge of, now this happens, and then this unrelated thing happens.
Yeah, it was a good sense of, this is going to become a thing eventually, and it's going to have some significance to the actual plot of the episode, instead of just suddenly, oh god, headaches.
Yeah.
But I will agree that it is, a little forced. They honestly didn't really need to be that whole thing with how no one gets headaches anymore. I guess I could consider that silly, even though I didn't really write that down, but yeah, that's my first good. I do have a couple more, but what did you write down?
I only wrote down 3 things for this whole episode, because it was just by and large a B for me. It wasn't bad, it wasn't great, but it was enjoyable.
Yeah.
It was actually enjoyable. I think this is one of the first episodes I liked all the way through for the most part.
Yeah.
It's still very slow in its own way, but it's not uninteresting anymore.
Yeah, I would actually say just to cut in, like, I thought this was a well-paced episode, which was one of my other good things, but...
Yeah, well-paced for its time, for sure. Whereas the other ones were just badly written in general, by and large. Not all of them. I think we liked a couple.
Yeah, we liked a couple. Like, the first Ferengi episode we thought was decent, for the most part.
Yeah. But I would just say it was all around decent, and it's kind of the same thing you said, where, yeah, this actually has a pace to it, and constant themes throughout it, where within the first 10 minutes you hear the Ferengi sarcastically call him the hero of Maxia, and you're just thinking, oh man, there's some tension here. And yeah, I don't know, it just felt like a real episode, whereas most of the ones we've watched so far have not.
Yeah. It didn't even actually have a B plot, I realize now, thinking back on it. So.
And it also didn't have any, I think this might be the first episode, I can't remember, because a couple of them I've blocked from my memory. But a lot of the episodes have a totally unrelated data scene that has nothing to do with anything, whether it's the A plot or the B plot. Like, there's that one episode where, for some reason, it cuts to Geordi and Data, and Geordi's shaving, and they have a conversation about shaving, and then it goes back to the rest of the episode. There was none of that here. Like, anything Data said had something to do with the story.
Yeah.
Which is nice.
They've gotten a lot better at that. Like, the last few episodes have been really good about not showing that stuff in there.
Just total non sequiturs. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't have any bad. I didn't actually write anything down for bad. I didn't think there was anything straight up bad. Just kind of.
Yeah, mine are just a little nitpicky. Like, I have a couple bad, but they're like super kind of nitpicky stuff.
Well, we're Trekkies, so we're nitpicky.
Yeah, so I guess like before we move on to the bad, my one last good was that I liked that we were actually getting backstory on Picard, because we haven't actually really talked too much about like his actual history, aside from the very strange and unfitting fact that he's French.
Merde.
Yep, exactly. But yes, moving on to the bad, I only had two things written down. My first one was that the Ferengi are still ridiculous in a lot of ways.
Yeah, they walk around like little primate people.
Well, when they first beam over to the Enterprise at the beginning of the episode, they do like the weird thing with their hands, like they're like.
Yeah.
Like,
it's
really
absurd.
It's like they're better than they were in the first episode, where they like, because there was no weird battle scene where they were like trying to claw and fight people.
Yeah, they're getting better. I mean, it's still really hard for me to watch it. That was actually under my silly, but it's the same point that you just made. They're just ridiculous.
Yeah.
Especially for me as someone Deep Space Nine is one of my favorite shows of all time, and the Ferengi have a huge part in that show. But in that, they're just like people. They're just greedy.
Yeah.
You know? And so seeing them be like these little hissing monster people.
Like hobgoblin-esque.
Just like, I don't know what they were thinking, but at least they changed them. And they are a lot better than the first episode. They were all like practically on all fours in the first one.
And like I said, they're trying to like bite people as their like main fighting tactic, which was just so ridiculous. This actually shows them in a more like cunning light rather than like, because the first episode kind of makes them out to be buffoonish, honestly.
Yeah, this one you actually see one of them being crafty and malicious and
just
with a big long-term plan to disturb Picard and make him go crazy.
Yep.
What was your other bad?
My other bad, like, it was kind of actually, we kind of segued into it nicely. My other bad was I kind of thought the effects of, like, the brain sphere thing were a little inconsistent, because it goes from, like, just making him relive memories to actually, like,
full-on hallucinating
actions. Like, he just randomly is like, oh yeah, let's release the Stargazer from Tractor Beam. Like, he demonstrates this fact that he's aware that he's doing this stuff, and then it goes back to him being, like, deluded. So I was just a little confused as to how that, like, was supposed to translate.
Yeah, I think that's just an 80s thing, I don't know.
Yeah. It didn't, like, ruin the episode for me, but I didn't notice. I was just kind of like, that's a little weird.
Yeah, sometimes it makes him hurt, and then sometimes he's full-on LSD mode.
Yeah.
And then other times he's just aware, and he's like, let's just do this thing, guys.
He's just sort of like, I'm plotting things or something. It's just like, okay.
one thing I thought was silly, going on to my first silly, The Ferengi ship is called Ferengi, if I'm not mistaken. Because at one point Riker hails them and goes, Starship Ferengi! And I don't know if that was just a bad phrasing of saying, hey, generic Ferengi ship that we don't know the name of.
I didn't actually catch that.
But
I always
say, attention, Starship Ferengi. And I was like, really? Like, it's like saying Starship Human.
Yeah, I didn't actually catch that. I always thought he was just saying Ferengi Starship, but who knows? Mm-hmm. But whatever.
And then the only other silly I had, because I don't have a lot of notes for this episode, like I said, because it was just all indecent.
Neither did I, because, like I said, a lot of my stuff is, like, very basic, like, oh, this, and this, because this episode was, by and large, like, just an enjoyable thing all the way through. Like, not particularly memorable, I guess, but, like, just solid.
Yeah. You're gonna think that I'm just being a dick right now, but my other silly was I can't stand how Wesley is allowed to quote-unquote tinker with the engines.
Somehow I knew you were gonna...
Because I didn't say it in the summary because I was trying to keep it brief because it's always going to be around like a minute long reading through the whole thing. But towards the beginning of the episode, there's a part where Wesley is the one who detects the Stargazer in the distance before they know what it is. And he detects it while he's like messing with the ship's systems and engineering. And then just waltzes up to the bridge eventually and informs them. And I just can't understand, like, this is the capital ship of the entire Federation, and they have, a 13-year-old just messing around with their systems? Give me a break, dude.
Yeah, somehow I knew you were going to mention that. Like, when you said, like, oh, you're going to think I'm a dick, I'm like, this is about Wesley, isn't it?
Just put him out the airlock, man.
This is not Battlestar Galactica. People don't do that. Well, I mean, I guess they do when they're, drunk off their minds, like in the second episode, but...
The only other note I have at all, and then you can just take it away for as long as you want. This episode was directed by a guy named Rob Bowman. I forgot to mention in the beginning. He's the guy who directed the episode Brothers in Season 4, which takes place after Best of Both Worlds, the one where Picard is, like, home. So he does some good work, from what I've seen.
Yeah, it's definitely... like a well done episode. Like nothing about it really struck me as like overly cheesy.
Yeah.
I mean, some of the camera shots are a little 80s, but I mean, it's not like outright like, oh god, what are you doing? But
right.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts from you before we end it?
I had one silly written down, like one very specific one. But at the very beginning of the episode, when they first meet Damon Bach, he goes and he does his whole spiel, and then when they end transmission, Counselor Troy is like, I sense considerable deception and danger from him. It's like, you sense danger from him. I'm pretty sure danger is not the motion.
Yeah, that
like,
kind of stuff crops up a lot in the early seasons.
Yeah. That was like the one line where I was like, what?
It's because they just need a plot device, and they,
Yeah, it would have made more sense if she was like, I sense that he's hiding something, or that he's lying somehow. Or that even that she senses anger, because his whole, like, motive for doing this is because Picard killed his son after the Ferengi ship fired on the Stargazer 9 years before this episode takes place.
Yeah.
So. But I just thought that was a really weird phrasing. I sense considerable deception from him, sir, and danger. Hey?
I sense plot device in him.
I sense a plot device. He's going to do bad things, and we're going to have to stop him.
Yeah. Overall, it was a decent episode. I don't think it's anything special, but it wasn't terrible or bad.
No, definitely not. It was a very
interesting development for Picard.
Yeah, it's a very solid character episode, because I feel like...
Especially the fact, too, that he lost a ship, which is kind of a big deal for a captain, and you can tell that he's bothered by it.
Yeah, because he had to abandon it. Because he makes that point early on in the episode that they had to abandon it and, like, travel for weeks in shuttlecraft. Mm-hmm. Which is weird to me, because... Actually, I don't even think we've really seen the shuttles in this show yet. Now that I think about it.
Oh, but we will, and they will land on many random planets, and all be destroyed.
But yeah, like the shuttles are like super small, like, and they just don't seem like they'd be good places to hang out for weeks at a time. So it's pretty interesting little detail. Because I feel like Star Trek, when they do these kind of episodes, it's always the best when they like focus on character rather than, I guess, plot or big developments or anything like that. So I feel like this is a very solid character-based episode, which is where Trek is usually at its strongest.
Well, we're at 15 minutes. Is there anything else you want to say?
No, I think that's about it. Like we said, this is just a decent episode, and it was
a solid
enjoyable.
B- or B for me.
Yeah, I'd call it roughly a B, because like it's better than.
I couldn't really point out anything really that was like just bad.
Yeah, like I said, my bad was just sort of like nitpicky and stuff like that. But yeah, it was a very solid episode. I mean, I'd give it a B just because it is better than most of the stuff we've seen so far. Because we kind of have, at this point, a very oddly shaped bar.
It's very inconsistent.
It's a roller coaster this early in TNG, man. It's just like ups and downs all over the place.
Yeah. So, all right. ReTrekking podcast.
Episode 9.
Yeah. Hit the like button. Hit subscribe. Give us $1 million.
Subscribe, Plox.
Yeah, patron our super Patreon and give us $10 billion, please.
10 billion.
Yep. Farewell.